Yo, what is up, guys? It's coming back here again today with another video, another recap of the NBA games from today. Something I really want to focus on in this video is the Celtics, who have blew a 24-point lead earlier to the Pelicans. Man, it was a pretty solid day of basketball. Not too many incredible games, but there were some good ones. Like I mentioned, the Celtics game versus the Pelicans team that they ended up losing to, a pretty good game. Although there was some stuff in that game I really need to talk about that really pissed me off to watch as a fan. And then Nets Clippers was the other pretty big game of the night. So I'll go ahead and start with those games first. Celtics Pelicans, like I said, great game. The problem though was the refereeing. This was one of the worst officiated games I've ever watched. And I've watched a lot of basketball. This was terrible. There's just reviews left and right. I think the game lasted for about 45 minutes. It was between 30 and 45, maybe more towards 40 minutes. That this game lasted from the 2-minute mark in the fourth quarter till the end of overtime. 40 minutes of that's 8 minutes of basketball that took 40 minutes. That should not be possible. Because I mean, like, there were challenges, of course, but every play was reviewed, every single play. The refs didn't get and I swear they didn't get the call right once. Like, every time there was a view, the call was overturned because the refs, for some reason, just could not see. They made so many calls that just didn't make sense. And then when we went to the view, we're like, yeah, why do we need to review this? Like, obviously you were wrong. And then there was some weird decisions. Like, there was a play where Kemba Walker, he went up for a three, and he did end up passing it off, but they said that Lonzo Ball fouled him, which he didn't in the act of shooting because it wasn't a foul at all. Lonzo made no contact with Kemba Walker, but Kemba threw the ball directly to Jason Tatum next to him when the foul was called. And then, despite that, the Celtics had to then do a jump ball to regain possession of the ball because the ball was technically in the air and out of Kemba Walker's possession. Like, that's the rule. The rule is that if there was a foul that's overturned, if the ball's in the air, then it has to be a jump ball. But, like, I feel like there has to be some ability to use judgment there because the ball was going straight to Jason Tatum. It wasn't like anyone was going to intercept that. It was going straight to Jason Tatum. So that should have been the Celtics ball. They ended up winning the jump ball, so it didn't even matter. Shout out to the Pelicans for making a comeback. This was the biggest comeback in Pelicans franchise history. They came back from down 24 points against a pretty solid team, a team with a lot of star power: Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. Although they really just didn't play like that tonight. Jason Tatum had a pretty good game. He had some really clutch buckets all throughout the game. He was really good tonight, or today, I guess. It was an earlier game. But man, Jaylen Brown was uncharacteristically bad tonight. He couldn't hit a shot to save his life. He had a great attempt to go ahead towards the end of the game on Brandon Ingram, and he just missed. It was like a layup, basically. He just hit it too far off the front rim. And then Kemba Walker, man. Kemba Walker was terrible tonight. And I'm a fan. I'm someone who really likes UConn basketball. I'm a huge fan of Kemba Walker's. But he was awful. Absolutely terrible. And he was like that a couple days ago. And then I think the last game the Celtics played, he had a really good game. And everyone's like, oh, shoot, Kemba Walker's back. And then he was terrible. And this wouldn't be a bad thing, or it wouldn't be as bad if Terry Rozier, who was in the sign and trade for Kemba Walker, going from the Celtics to the Hornets when the Celtics picked up Kemba Walker, Terry Rozier is balling. Terry Rozier has been incredible. He's played like a borderline all-star this season. He this season has been better than Kemba Walker, and that's crazy. Now I know Kemba's dealing with injuries and stuff like that, but it makes the Celtics look really bad when a player who you brought up and were developing, you let him go to bring in the star player Kemba Walker, which was obviously the decision they were going to make. There was no way they were going to go, all right, we're just going to stick out with Terry Rozier. But now it looks like if they had, they might have been off in a better spot because Kemba Walker seems to be regressing. He's not playing as well as he did in Charlotte. Obviously, he's not going to put up the same numbers because he's now a third option behind Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I don't know why his name slipped me for a second. But he's just not playing well at all. Even if he's not putting up the numbers, he's just not playing good basketball. And this Celtics team is in dire need of something. Like, this team has some solid pieces. Tatum, Brown. I'm still hopeful Kemba will get it back together. But outside of that, and then Marcus Smart, who's injured. Outside of that, no piece on this team should be safe. No one should be safe on this team. Jeff Teague sucks as a backup point guard. He's not their answer. They have to get someone else. Peyton Pritchard's been really solid, but they need another guard back there. You have Tristan Thompson, who just has not played very well this season. They got rid of Enes Kanter, one of the worst defensive bigs in the league, and they got worse defensively. Like, how does that make sense? Tristan Thompson just hasn't been the answer. Daniel Tice is a solid piece, but he shouldn't be safe by any means. I personally think Robert Williams might be the best center in this roster. He showed a lot of promise tonight, and I don't know why he doesn't get more minutes. I don't get why Brad Stevens isn't playing him more minutes, especially when they've been struggling. Just try to switch something up. Aaron Nesmith, he has a lot of potential as he obviously is a rookie, but they need established guys right now. So I think the Celtics team is going to go out and get a Terrence Ross or like a Harrison Barnes. They're going to get a wing scorer. They have to do something because Danny Ainge said this a couple days ago, and I'm going to reiterate it. This Celtics team right now is not good enough to win a championship. They're just not. They're not better. They can't. I don't think they could beat the Sixers right now. I don't think they could beat the Bucks. I don't think they could beat the Nets. And those are in my opinion, the top 3 teams right now in that conference. You cannot beat any of those teams with this Celtics roster. You're just not going to. No big on that team is going to stop a Joel Embiid. No one's going to stop a Giannis. No one on that team is going to stop the Nets offense, especially when you have James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. They don't even have a dominant big, and they're still going to get cooked. This Celtics team is in dire need of moves, and for a team that has looked so promising the last few seasons, this just feels like their weakest team yet. It feels like they're getting worse. When Tatum and Brown are getting better, the pieces around them are getting worse. And I don't know if that's Danny Ainge to blame. That might be something you have to consider because Danny Ainge has made a lot of moves hasn't made a lot of moves, I guess is what I need to say. Because there were a lot of times where people were like, Danny Ainge should have made this move, and he didn't. And now this team seems to be on the downtrend despite their 2 young stars getting better. And I know that the Celtics always seem to get pieces. They always seem to come back and be stronger. But as the rest of the East is rising, the Celtics are falling. And when you have you have one of the best young duos in the entire NBA, that can't be happening. They're just wasting their time. So, I don't know. We'll see what the Celtics do. The Pelicans definitely deserve credit for coming back from this. They're starting to step it up. Zion was fantastic, like I said, tonight. Brandon Ingram hit a dagger 3 at the end of the game. They're a really, really fun duo to watch, and it was cool to see Zion get the ball at the end of regulation because it feels like he never does. Anyways, I'm going to move on to another game. I'll move on now to Nets-Clippers. That was the other big-ticket game. This game was really, really good. Both teams were almost fully healthy, except for Kevin Durant was missing. But it was still a really, really good matchup. The Nets are really good even without Kevin Durant. Couple controversial things towards the end of the game. Paul George ended up sitting out the last minute and a half or so of the game due to a minutes limit. There's 2 minutes left in the game, 2 minutes and 1.5 minutes. He has to play. I get he's on a mid-limit man, but I would have loved to see Paul George out there. I get it's for his health. Really, the issue is that they didn't manage his minutes well enough so that he was going to be able to play in those final few minutes. If this minutes limit was really at a hard set limit, Paul George should have been out of that game earlier so he could come in and play this final crunch time minutes because they really, really needed him out there. They couldn't seem to get buckets, and the Nets were just hitting him with a strike after a strike, and they just couldn't punch back. Paul George was really needed out there. Kawhi Leonard at the end of the game had a chance to tie the game and send it to overtime. He drove to the basket. James Harden ended up getting in front of him, and he kind of grabbed Kawhi. Kawhi kind of pushed his arm off, and Kawhi was called for the offensive foul after James Harden kind of, the typical Harden thing where he throws his head back, his arms go flailing. It was a flop. It was. Was it a foul on Kawhi? Maybe. I wasn't a huge fan of the call. I think that they got to let him play on. I also wanted to see overtime, though. But regardless, this was a good win for the Nets. That one call doesn't change the entire game that was played before it. I would have loved to see overtime, like I said. But, yeah, the Nets are now rolling. I think that's 6 in a row for them. 4 of those wins without Kevin Durant. They just went through and they beat the Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns, a bunch of really good teams, and they're just kind of rocking right now. And I think the Jazz in there, I believe. Really, really good stretch for the Nets. The Nets are really starting to hit their stride, and if they add a couple more pieces, they are. I know they're already dangerous because of Kyrie and Harden and Durant, but this team has a lot more potential to get more dangerous. Also, Harden's been incredible this season. I don't think he will get talked about as an MVP candidate just because that team's so stacked, but he's played like an MVP type player. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really watch much of Pistons Magic. Magic got a win by 9. Good for them. I still think they should trade off some of their pieces. They're winning too many games if they're trying to tank. I don't know. We'll see. Timberwolves Knicks, I could talk about this. I don't need to talk about this game too much, more so the aftermath of it. The recent news coming out that Ryan Saunders was fired as the Timberwolves coach. I'm not at all surprised about this. The Timberwolves are way underachieving, even with a lot of injuries and stuff. They do have some decent talent on that roster, but the problem is even when that talent is healthy, which to be fair, they haven't been very often, they're not playing up to their abilities. This team should be 7 wins. I don't think they're very, very good because Anthony Edwards is really young. He's pretty inefficient right now. He's not great. Malik Beasley's pretty solid. D'Lo's had his ups and downs, and like I said, Cat's been out with COVID and injury and stuff. So like there are excuses to be made, but even when the talent is on the floor for this Timberwolves team, they're just not as good as they should be, and they don't play. It's not even like they're losing games; they're getting blown out in games left and right. He had to go, and they hired Chris Finch, I believe, from the Toronto Raptors. It's a Toronto Raptors coach. He's going to be an amazing coach. That just seems to be what always happens. Now I'll talk about the Thunder game. Thunder, obviously my favorite team. I don't even know why I need to tell you at this point. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should be an all-star. That's really the takeaway from this game, from any Thunder game, in my opinion. He was unstoppable tonight. The Cavaliers couldn't do anything. He had Isaac Okoro in hell. Isaac Okoro was having the worst night of his life out there because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander dropped 31, 9 assists, 4 rebounds, super efficient like he always is. He ended up going 10 of 12 from the free throw line too, with both of his misses in one trip to the line. So every other trip to the line, he was perfect. Teo Maledon hit 3 threes. He was really good. Lou Dort put some clamps on Colin Sexton at times. Hamidou Diallo, great bench piece. Great win for the Thunder, just all around. The Cavaliers side of the ball, Jarrett Allen dominated us, and I cannot believe they got him for so cheap. They got him for like Dante Exum in a second, and Dante Exum wasn't even playing. So that was a huge steal for them. Shout out to the Cavs for making that happen. And with that, we only down to 3 games. Not a lot to talk about in all these games. With the Bucks-Kings game, talking about coaches getting fired, Luke Walton should be fired ASAP. He's not a good coach. He's just not. I think that this Kings team has too much talent to be kind of playing at the level that they are. I think that they're underachieving. They've underachieved for a couple seasons. And if they want to make the playoffs, they have to fire Luke Walton. The Bucks just stomped them today. The Bucks are kind of looking like they're hitting their stride a little bit. They're playing more like the Bucks team that we knew last season. Giannis looked like Giannis. Chris Middleton had an incredible performance tonight. The Kings could not stop them no matter what they threw out there. Nucks. I just combined Nuggets and Hawks. Excuse me. Nuggets Hawks game. This game was Jokic's worst game of the season, and he only had 15, 10, and 6, which isn't a terrible game for most players, but for Jokic, that's awful. He was really inefficient. Clint Capella had him in prison all night. He just couldn't seem to score. It just didn't look like a Jokic game. Jamal Murray stepped up a lot. He stepped up a lot recently, especially 30 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He had that 50-point game the other night. Jamal Murray's really starting to hit his stride this season. It looks like, given it was against pretty poor defense in the Atlanta Hawks, especially at the guard position for the Atlanta Hawks, with Trae Young and Kevin Huerter running out there. But still, it's no easy feat to score 30 in the NBA, and he's hitting his stride. Jokic needs to find his groove, and if those role players can even just step it up a little bit, maybe if they make an acquisition, maybe the Nuggets can end up being a force out west. It remains to be seen. They're 16 and 14 on the season, definitely underachieving. We'll see if they're able to turn it around if Jamal Murray can keep up this production. Clint Capella has been really, really good this season. He's been an incredible defensive force for this Hawks team, really anchoring that team, a team that a lot of people, including myself, expected to be really poor defensively. And given they haven't been great, but when Clint Capella is on the court, it makes life a lot more difficult for a lot of people. Trae Young had 35, 15, and 6. He's an all-star. I've seen some people say he shouldn't be an all-star. Trae Young's an all-star. I don't think there's a question about that. And finally, I believe this is the last game of the night. Yeah, 76ers Raptors. This was also Joel Embiid's worst game of the season. And Joel Embiid still had a pretty good game despite that being the worst game of his season. He had 25, 17, and 2, and that was the worst game of his season. This was probably the first time all season that Joel Embiid has looked human. He looked like he couldn't really get a shot. He couldn't get to his spots. A lot of credit for that goes to Aaron Baines. Aaron Baines played really well tonight in 29 minutes. They actually started Pascal Siakam at the center position. Yeah, he had a good game. He had 23, 8, and 7, trying to make a last-second push for an all-star spot. I don't think he's going to get it, but, he put up good numbers. Norman Powell's been on a mission recently. He only scored 11. It wasn't a great game for him. They didn't even have Kyle Lowry in this game, and they still beat the Sixers. I don't know. It was just Joel Embiid's worst game of the season. Ben Simmons has really started to hit his stride, though. So this game, the Sixers could probably just write this game off as an anomaly. It happens. Sometimes you just get beat by teams. And if Ben Simmons is putting up 28, 5, and 9, and Joel Embiid's putting up 25, 17, and 2 on a nightly basis, there's not many of these games you're going to lose. Unless the other guys play as poorly as they did tonight. This was really kind of on Tobias Harris. He only had 13 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. It just wasn't a good game for him. Shake Milton looked kind of rusty when in his first action back. Seth Curry struggled. Danny Green struggled. If those guys hit a couple more shots, then this is a Sixers win. I don't think they need to be too worried about this, especially since the Raptors have been kind of hitting a groove recently. After I said that they should blow it up, they started to hit a groove. I still think that's something they should consider, but they are now above 500 at 16 and 15, and I think that they are going to end up being a tough out in the playoffs if they continue to play like this, if they make another addition. I've heard rumors of Andre Drummond going to the Raptors. We'll see if that comes true. If Kyle Lowry can stay healthy, this team will be a fun team to watch, a hard out in the playoffs, but I don't see them as much more than probably a first-round exit, maybe a second-round exit if they get that 4 seed, but I don't know. And with that being said, I think that's about all I want to talk about for these games tonight. Let me know what your takeaways were from the games tonight. Let me know what you think about the firing of Ryan Saunders. Let me know what you think about the Celtics and their situation, and I will see you guys later. Everyone say it back.